the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Taking a look at DraftKings tonight, 10-game slate, and we're coming over from pitching. Pitching is relatively priced down as far as most of those options go. So I think you can reasonably fit a lot of hitters in, regardless of what format you're playing.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the main appeal to this slate, but we'll see. We'll see how we do as we go through it.
Yeah, definitely. As far as looking at the Dodgers and Phillies here first, Scott Kazmir versus Jake Thompson. The Dodgers bats, coming off a really solid night here in Philly. Obviously, Chase Utley with the big 2-home-run game. But they're all relatively expensive. Outside of Utley and Josh Reddick, everyone's pretty much that you want to use over $5K.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer. Grandal, we saw. Obviously, I think you were on him a little bit. I was not. So good on you. Good on you, pal. But yeah, super expensive. I might be willing to go at a Reddick or an Utley, but at the same time, I don't think I'm going to be looking at this as a full stack either.
It is an expensive one. Corey Seager's a guy I don't mind paying up for. As far as Gonzalez goes, I'm not really a fan of using him at 5.2. Either am I at Grandal at 5.1. I think those are just a little bit prices that I'm not quite as high. I think Seager's the one with the most upside out of that grouping.
Yeah, I totally agree. Adrian Gonzalez is not someone you want to pay, over $5K for. He simply just hasn't. He hasn't done it this year. 10 homers. You don't want to pay $5K for a guy that isn't fast and can't hit homers.
Yeah, his upside has been really limited in 2016. Yeah, I'm in agreement. Not a guy I'm looking to pay over $5K for. Matchup is very solid for these Dodgers bats. Obviously Thompson, limited sample size, giving up a 53% hard ball rate to lefties, 2.25 home runs per 9. That's trouble against this Dodgers lineup.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the Phillies go, talked about on the pitching podcast, we were having a little bit of home run issues against right-handed bats, 1.60 home runs per 9 this year. I'm certainly okay with using a couple of righties against them in a tournament fashion. Aaron Alter, Maikel Franco. Not a lot of risk at those prices.
No, not really. In terms of tournament upside, there is a solid amount. So I'd be willing to take a risk and someone that costs $2,500 at the top of the lineup. But even Aaron Alter, like you mentioned, someone I'm thinking about gambling on for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those value plays in a tournament if you're looking to get a little bit of lower owned, a little low in potential play there. He's probably the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Red Sox and Orioles next here. David Price versus Dylan Bundy. Some good prices here in this matchup. But obviously it is we talked about this game as kind of being a high risk, high reward for these pitchers. And I think kind of the same thing goes with the hitters as well.
Yeah. I'm looking more at the Orioles here than the Red Sox. I think just based on the prices. Trumbo at 4, Adam Jones at 39, Scope at 31. I understand Price is a solid pitcher, but overall, I just think those prices are pretty intriguing.
And you look at Price, 322 WOBA to righties this year, 1.17 home runs per 9. It's not like Baltimore's, they've put up 8 runs against him in 2 starts. So, and I doubt he kind of goes through unclean. So I'm certainly okay with using those bats that you mentioned, but they're definitely not cash game worthy for me.
No, definitely not. But it's like Price is, even when he pitched well, like last time out against the Diamondbacks, 8 strikeouts, but he gave up 10 hits and 3 earned and 2 homers as well. So, there's a reasonable range of outcomes where he gives up 3 or 4 runs and still has a good outing. So it's really weird how his games have gone, but I think you just kind of take it for what it is at this point in the season.
There really is his better starts are really 7 or 8 innings, going deep into the game, 3 to 4 earned runs, and balancing it out with near double-digit strikeouts.
Right.
And it's kind of how it could go here. So if you do hit on those straggling plays that Baltimore is going to have, because it's not going to be a full stack that likely goes off. It's going to be one or two guys.
Exactly. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. And then for Bundy, I mean, I like Bogarts at 35. I don't know about you. I mean, it's not a perfect matchup, but it's still Dylan Bundy, you know?
It's a tough matchup. I mean, I still don't mind it. I don't mind using these Red Sox bats. Definitely not really a cash game move for me. Like in comparison to Betts or Ortiz. I mean, obviously Betts is just on fire. I mean, 5 homers over the last 2 games. He's on one of those stretches again where it's like, Jesus, do I fade? I mean, because it's like, it's scary. You don't know when it's going to end and when it's going to start again. So I'm still okay with using those guys. But as far as like Ortiz goes, I mean, I'd rather use Votto or Paul Goldschmidt if I'm paying up in cash games. It's just much safer matchup.
Yeah, I agree. That's fair. I guess overall it's a tournament lineup. I just think Bogarts at 35 is pretty cheap.
Yeah, it definitely is. And even Pedroia, I mean, 4,200, obviously tougher matchup, but Pedroia's been, very solid out of the leadoff spot here of late.
Yeah, very much so.
Typical names there. I even don't mind a Jackie Bradley Jr. as well at 46.
Mm-hmm.
White Sox and Indians here. Carlos Carrasco versus Anthony Renuado. Indians bats are all priced up as you expected, but definitely deservingly so against this weak right-hander. I mean, essentially all these guys are certainly in play. Kipnis is one of those guys where I just love to pay up for him. Out of the entire Indians offense, Kipnis is always the guy I favor the most to go up and pay over $5K for.
No question against righties. Against lefties, it's Napoli country, but against righties, I mean, Kipnis is the guy for me. It's worth paying up the 200-300 more you have to pay for over Lindor and Carlos Santana. So if you are going for a standalone here, it is going to be Kipnis for me. But hey, I mean, if you want to get wacky, I think you could definitely throw the top 3 in this lineup out there and feel really confident about at least a relatively high floor,
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think they all are certainly in play, and it's not a full 4 or 5 person stack. I limited to about 3.
Yeah.
I could definitely see myself doing, as you mentioned, a Santana, Kipnis, Lindor, or a Kipnis, Lindor, Napoli. I think those all work out pretty well. And also, although Chisenhall's cooled off, I mean, he continues to kind of be the value piece. And in a matchup like this, I certainly don't mind trotting him out again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll wait to see what they do with the very end of their lineup. But it's looking like there's going to be some different names down there tonight.
Yeah, it definitely could be. I mean, obviously, they're in a spot where, there could open up some value, which would obviously be nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the White Sox goes, I'm not really looking on them on a 10-game slate against Carrasco. I mean, Carrasco has been home run prone a little bit this year, but this White Sox offense, I mean, I'm not paying $4,700 for Abreu, and I'm not really diving down to those secondary options.
What about the bully? Justin Morneau?
Nah.
He's been hitting well. But yeah, no, I agree. He's a fade. But overall, the Eaton and Morneau grouping kind of does give me a little worry about Carrasco. But overall, I think he should be fine. So I don't think you're touching anyone in this White Sox lineup.
No, the slate's big enough to where you don't really need to.
That's kind of just getting a little too fancy, probably.
Yeah. Royals and Tigers next. Anibal Sanchez versus Yordano Ventura. Looking at this Royals side, they're all very cheap. I mean, outside of really Cuthbert and Orlando up top. If you're looking to dive down into some value, I mean, obviously Salvador Perez and Eric Hosmer are probably the better guys to do it with. They've been the more consistent options out of this entire group. And obviously Sanchez, I mean, against both sides of the plate has been awful this year.
Yeah, Hosmer's looking like a nice play there at 33. I really like that move. And, I mean, even Kendrys Morales, depending on where he's at in the lineup. So I think you can definitely fire away with those, maybe even a Lorenzo Cain as well. But I don't know about you. I don't want to pay $4,500 for Paulo Orlando.
No, I don't either. And, I mean, outside of that, it's like, well, there's a lot of guys where they're at positions I don't really want to use. I mean, same thing with kind of Hosmer. It's like, well, I don't really want to pay down, but if it's like I'm paying up at elsewhere for Kipnis's and bets and all that, it's like, all right, maybe I have to dive down somewhere.
Right. Or if you're going Darvish Lester in cash or something like that, then maybe you have to go down there. But yeah, obviously not optimal.
Yeah. Definitely not. As far as the Tiger side goes, I don't mind some of these bats, but they're all kind of more of a GPP fashion. JD Martinez, Victor Martinez are probably the two I'm looking to use the most. Outside of that, it's a pretty bad back half of the lineup. And even if Miguel Cabrera doesn't come back, it's like, oof. That name appeal, it just makes that lineup look a lot worse than what it is.
It really, really does. I think you might have a crush on JD Martinez. Do you have a crush on JD Martinez?
He's a baller, man. I mean, how
Yeah.
can he not? He just continues to
Yeah,
be
no,
solid.
he's been hitting almost 400 over the last 15 games. So, very good reason to like him. Only 4,300 against Giordano Ventura. So, I think that's a pretty reasonable play. As far as Victor Martinez, it's okay. I'd rather go Martinez, or I'd rather go JD over Victor, though.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, the game bits and pieces were very picky with this one. I think you should be too.
Mm-hmm.
Twins and Braves next here. Kyle Gibson versus Mike Foltynewicz. And overall, I'm not really a big fan of the Braves offense, who I know are projected for actually a relatively high total. I'm not really a big fan of the price tags. I just feel like, obviously, Freeman's certainly the best hitter on the Braves, one of the better left-handed hitters. But it's in contention where it's like he's putting up competing with Votto and Goldschmidt in better parks and better matchups. I might as well go with them.
Yeah, I do worry about not totally fading Freeman, but just not using him. Because I mean, another righty, he's obviously just had 3 multi-hit games in his last 6. Obviously had that nice home run streak. So, I mean, it's there every time against righties. He's getting going here since the emergence or trade for Matt Kemp. So that's been a big deal for him. But Kyle Gibson, as we mentioned on the pitcher pod, I don't necessarily mind him. This lineup beyond Freeman is really exploitable, so not totally in on that run total. I think that's off.
Yeah, it could be. I definitely could be. I mean, just in that ballpark, it's always weird seeing that number there in Turner Field with this Braves offense. It's just kind of like, well,
Yeah.
I'm not buying into it. So
No, I'm not.
as far as the Twins go, I like some of these prices for them. I mean, obviously, Brian Dozier continues to just tear the cover off the ball. And even some punt options around him. And obviously, we see Max Kepler at a reasonable price there, 4,300 for the first time in a while. I certainly don't mind some of these guys here against Foltynewicz, who still struggles with left-handers.
Yeah, definitely looking at the lefties here. As you mentioned, Kepler. I mean, I don't know how we feel about Jorge Polanco, but at 3K in that lineup, I'm definitely okay with looking at that against Foltynewicz.
Yeah, I certainly am too. I mean, decent value there. Joe Mauer is the guy who I'm not really looking to use. He's probably the lefty that I never feel like paying for Joe Mauer in the midst of other names there at first base.
There was one Joe Mauer night
Long ago.
couple months ago, and after that, I was just done. He has been crushing it lately, but no, it's not a Joe Mauer night, I don't think.
Marlins and Reds next here. Andrew Cashner versus Homer Bailey. So, I mean, basically the Reds are dealing with quite a bit of injuries up top. I mean, Billy Hamilton's missed last game. Duvall missed the last game. Phillips missed the last 2. Joey Votto is the only kind of healthy one that we can touch on now. And you look at Cashner, I mean, 371 woba to lefties, 1.54 home runs per 9. Votto is obviously one of the clear-cut number 1 options, especially with the way he's been in the second half. I mean, hitting over 400. Just a consistent guy at this point.
He's an easy cash game first baseman for me. I know it's expensive, but it's Andrew Cashner, it's Joey Votto, it's fireworks by the bay. So, as far as Cozart goes, I don't know. I don't think I'm in on that, even at 39. But overall, I just worry about this lineup in general, other than Votto.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of hoping that Duvall and Billy Hamilton can make it back into the lineup because this is a decent matchup. And obviously, we talked about Cashner being a high-risk, high-reward play, but definitely the lineup would push me off of them if those 2 are back in there.
And I think it just kind of puts Scott Schiebler into really strong play at 2,900, you know?
Yeah, definitely one of those value punt plays you can certainly roll with, and it'll have the
Mhm.
matchup against Cashner to do some damage.
Right.
As far as Marlins go, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of some of these prices. I mean, I guess Yelich. I mean, obviously we talked about him yesterday, but we talked about him being a little bit more in favor of him on FanDuel. Um, Bailey, I don't know. I mean, obviously you can make a case for some lefties against him, but I can't justify using some of these Marlins bats at their prices.
No, at 49, same with D Gordon. It's like at 49, they kind of priced me out of them. If they were 4K, I'd be all over it, but 49 is just too expensive for me, especially for each.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I'm certainly looking elsewhere. Cubs and Brewers next year. Jimmy Nelson versus John Lester, and Cubs are obviously priced up quite a bit. And you look at Nelson. I mean, he's a guy who does struggle with lefties. 346 WOBA this season, 1.34 runs per nine. It's always been a career issue with him. So obviously that puts the Fowler, Rizzo, Zobrist, all in play there. And I do like the Zobrist price tag. I mean, he's one of the reasonable options in that Cubs front four.
Yeah, I love Zobrist Price, obviously, compared to the rest of the top four in that lineup. But overall, I think you're going all in with a stack if you're doing it. I don't see the one-off move really. I want to get the whole pie. If I'm going in on this Cubs team, because if I'm paying up for one guy at 53, that probably means I'm paying down at pitching anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Rizzo's probably the one guy I don't mind as the one-off, or Bryant. I think those two are still fine one-offs for me. But I'm with you. I do like the front four as a stack there. It is expensive, projected for over 6 runs. Cubs stack has been kind of off for a fair amount of time now, so I think it is going to be a little bit contrarian to actually grab all 4.
Yep.
As far as the Brewers go, obviously John Lester. I mean, on the hill, obviously no slouch there. But even though, I mean, there are still some plays I can see viable, like an Orlando Arcia or Hernan Perez, because there is some stolen base upside with those two if they get on. But it's obviously if they get on, it's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I'm not in. I'm not in on Brewers tonight, but I can understand the value aspect of the lineup.
Yeah, it's more just value and looking to shoot for a couple stolen bases between the two.
Right.
A's and Rangers here next. Yu Darvish versus Sean Manaea. As far as using A's go, I'm not really looking to use anyone there. Obviously, Darvish hasn't gotten through all of his starts clean, but he's been obviously one who does limit damage. I think Chris Davis was the only one to really do anything off him in that last start against the A's. So if you wanted to believe in, using a little matchup history, go for it. But overall, I'm not using A's here.
No, I don't. That's not something that intrigues me very much, to be honest. Normally you'll hear me say, "Well, Vaught against a righty," but not tonight.
No, I think we'll go over to the Rangers here, who obviously facing a lefty who is really home run prone against right-handed bats. 1.56 home runs per nine this year, 6 over his last 4 starts. Obviously, guys like Beltran, I mean, they're all priced up relatively high. Profar 3,500 leading off, decent value if you want to give it a look. Overall, though, I mean, this Texas offense is expensive.
Very expensive. And I mean, if you want to go with a Profar at 35, I'm okay with that. But overall, I mean, I don't like paying up over 5K for Beltran. I like him at 45. Can I just have him at 45, please?
No.
No, I don't think that's going to be an option anymore. But that's where I like my Carlos Beltran. It is a good matchup for him. I like Beltre, but I don't want to pay 51. I like the Adrian Beltre that's been 39 for most of the year, if not cheaper. So the word's out at DK that this Rangers lineup's good, and it's a bummer.
It's funny because we were talking that pitching is priced down here on DraftKings, but it's like all the guys you want to use are all priced up over 5K. It's like there's no leeway where there's no guys in that mid 4K range.
So you can't really finish off the lineup. You can get those decent pitchers, but at the same time, you're like, crap. Everyone's over 5K.
I mean, there is some value. I mean, there's definitely guys you can dive down to.
Yeah, no doubt. But normally, I mean, we don't normally see a Beltre at 5-1, honestly.
No.
Normally in the mid fours, 44, somewhere around there. So
I want to say even in course this year he was cheaper.
like other than the last two games or last four, he's 49, 38, 5K 48. Before that, 43, 34, 42, 42, 4K, 34, 33, 41. So it's like that's where he's been for most of the year. And now it's just like egregious.
Yeah, because I mean that core series it was 4,200,
Yeah.
4,000 in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's odd. What the hell? I mean, we can't figure it out for the most part as far as what pricing goes on there and what they actually use.
Again,
I mean,
they must have updated something because you talked about the Neil Walker price the other day that just got skyrocketed over the last few days. So I think so. They adjusted for sure.
yeah, definitely did, and that shows in those Texas bats. But definitely good plays against Manea there.
Yeah, tangent, but back to the Rangers. Yeah, still good plays if you want to stack them. It's kind of like the Cubs in a lower end version.
Yeah. Diamondbacks and the Mets here next. Zach Godley versus John Neese. This was one of my favorite games on the night. Looking at the Arizona side, obviously those right-handers are in a really solid spot. John Neese, 1.97 home runs per nine, 372 WOBA to righties this year. Obviously, Goldschmidt is one of your elite plays at first base. Yasmani Tomas, Ricky Weeks, I definitely don't mind. Wellington Castillo, I mean, he's expensive here. He was 3K over on FanDuel, which is obviously a really nice price tag, but I don't mind paying up for Arizona bats.
I agree. Arizona bats, sure, especially the righties. I mean, Tomas, Goldschmidt, get excited about that group. Segura, certainly a group you want to pay up for, right with the Cubs for me. If not, I mean, those three, that's I might like those better than the Cubs, honestly.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You don't say that too often.
Oh.
I'm in agreement. I like picking on these here. I like the ballpark. I like a lot of those guys. I don't mind grabbing them as one-offs. I don't mind the stack. Curious to see how they shake that lineup up. It's always changing. So it's always like maybe you get a guy who comes in like a Brandon Drury or Chris Owings or something like that who comes into the lineup and hits in the middle order.
Yeah. Chris Owings, bomber at 5K, hitting from the 8th spot currently.
Yeah, that's the downside at the moment.
Right.
And the fact that he is 5K.
Yeah.
So apparently he's the second coming of Nomar Garcia Parra at that price tag.
The second coming of Max Kepler.
No, because Max Kepler's still playing.
Oh yeah.
Mets on the other side, I like Jose Reyes. I like 4,200 for him. Definitely a reasonable price tag against Godley, who has been average against lefties, 326 WOBA. So I don't mind certainly targeting with some of these left-handed bats, even at Granderson in tournament plays. Also curious to see how that back end of the lineup ships out. This is another one where it's really limited. There is some value there in the middle to late half of that order, and I'm certainly okay with using it once I see it.
I'm looking at Granderson and Bruce here as one-offs in sort of tournaments. Overall, though, I'm not too intrigued by this lineup. Maybe if Neil Walker's in there, I'd be down for a 2 through 4 stack. But overall, not totally intrigued.
Mm-hmm. Next one here, you got the Mariners and Angels. Tyler Skaggs versus Cody Martin. Talk about the Angels here. There is some decent value outside of Mike Trout. Mike Trout back to his usual 5,600 price tag after taking a day off down to 4,400 land.
It was real. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. No, it wasn't that fun. Come the end of the night.
I mean, his scoring, fitting the lineups in with him at a reasonable price and a good matchup was fun. The result, pretty mediocre, but I'll take it.
Yeah. They do have some value bats. I mean, obviously, Escobar, Cole Calhoun, Andrelton Simmons. I mean, hitting fifth, buying Pujols. Sarah Pujols is also very cheap at 3,200. I don't mind those guys because they are dive down options to help you pay for some of those 5K bats.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. So you look at the Cole Calhoun, Albert Pujols, like you mentioned, all those guys. That's good stuff. Jet Bandy might be in play again, 31. Certainly enjoyed his services last night in the 9 o'clock switch back into the lineup or whatever it was. It was horrible.
I don't know who was responsible for that, but I'm just going to say they're the worst. They're the
They,
absolute.
because I didn't. So if you guys played Bandy, then you probably did the same thing where you swapped him in, and then you saw he wasn't in the lineup, so you swapped him out. And two of my lineups last night, I just didn't get to it. Like, I just didn't get to it in time. And then the game started, and he was in the lineup, and I started Giovanni Soto. So that's sometimes how it goes, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I had him locked in on FanDuel all day, and then all of a sudden he's out of the lineup. I swapped it out, and I don't have there's no luxury of late swap there, so it
Right.
was frustrating.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
But overall, yeah, I think there are certainly some exploitable pieces in that lineup. Maybe even a Yunel Escobar. But for once, I'll say it, Jason. I'm not in on the Mariners. Not in. I'm not. I don't think I'm going to be having much exposure to anyone in this lineup tonight.
Yeah, I don't see myself really either. I mean, obviously Nelson Cruz is certainly always in play against the lefty with his numbers. I guess I'm Mike Zunino. Once again, I'm always throwing out the De Holy tournament punt play at first base. I certainly always don't mind that. Skaggs has been a little bit home run prone of late, but obviously two tougher matchups. That's about it though for me.
Yeah, I think I like Skaggs in this lineup or in this matchup. So I'm sorry, Mariners. I love you on 160 out of 161 games. But
This
tonight,
feels weird because I feel like I'm on the Mariners more so than you are, which never happens.
never. That never happens.
So
Lefties got to stick together unless it's against a lefty. You know what I'm saying?
then just take the night off, hit the
Yeah.
clubs.
Yeah, that's right.
That's going to wrap things up with the DraftKings Daily Trot. Be sure to check out DaveFantasyCafe.com for all great tools and content.